1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All
One of resistance,
we are a spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the first order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. Whew, what a week. We are going to have so much fun tonight. It is Bad Batch premiere night. We are going to have a blast. So much fun to get into. But before we do, let's get some introductions out of the way. My name is Aaron Harris, and joining me is the incredibly talented, my co-host, the man with the most, the David Motters. David, brother, how you doing?
I am doing excellent. I am ready to react and just, super excited for season 3 of The Bad Batch and ready to go.
I am ready as well. It's going to be incredible night tonight. We got a lot of great things to talk about. So let's not waste any time. We have a very, very special guest that we want to bring in. So let's get it going. Joining us this week to sit down and discuss this 3-episode premiere of the final season of The Bad Batch. We went through a list, and there was no other person we could invite than our guest today. This gentleman is well known. You've heard him recently as he was on, and we talked about a certain point of view in his short stories there. But of course, he's well known. He joined us for our premiere episode of season 2 of Bad Batch, and he's just a great friend of the show. Say hello and please welcome the incredibly talented Jason Fry. Jason, welcome back to Star Wars Reactions.
Thank you. It's very nice of you to have me back and for another run at the Bad Batch.
Well, we couldn't have it any other way. We actually sat down. We were actually looking at our notes from the first 2 seasons and realized you've been with us for the Bad Batch every opening. So season 1,
we did the beginning too.
Yeah, we did season 1. We did season 2. We had to get the trifecta in and get the season 3 under the belt, and it just is. It felt like the right thing to do.
Sounds great.
So let's take a look. We got 3 episodes of this premiere of the 3rd and final season of The Bad Batch. We had, of course, the first episode was episode 1 entitled Confined. Of course, all 3 of these released February 21st, 2024. Confined was directed by Saul Ruiz and written by Jennifer Corbett. Paths Unknown, of course, was the second episode, directed by Nate Villanueva, written by Matt Menchovitz. And of course, finally, episode 3, Shadows of Tantiss, directed by Stuart Lee, and written by Matt Menchovitz. So 3 incredible episodes to kick off the 3rd and final season. So let's just jump into our initial reactions to this 3-episode premiere of The Bad Batch. Jason, why don't you take the floor? You're our guest. You get first crack at it. What were your initial thoughts when you sat down and watched these 3 episodes?
I loved Confined, first of all, the first one. What I loved about it, I mean, there's plenty of great lore. We've come to really like these characters, etc. So all that was good, but it just, the tone of it was so interesting. Like, it made me think about watching the first episodes of the Clone Wars way back when, and which is a show I've loved, but the beginning of the Clone Wars is a kid's show. It's a kid's show with some really interesting things to say, definitely, but it's a kid's show. But like, I like Confined. It's barely a kids show. I think a lot of kids just would have been baffled by the slow pace and the moodiness, etc. But I loved it, and what it really spoke to me about was just how experimental and how really, frankly, brave and confident this not show, it's not the same show, but this kind of this linked universe of shows has become. I mean, you have none of the members of the Bad Batch, well, except for Crosshair. You have just a really, really quiet pace, and but it works so well, and I just loved it. It just it's I like to say weird Star Wars is the best Star Wars, but this was also just super weird, moody, kind of brilliant Star Wars. I love that one. Then we go from there into kind of a slightly more familiar kind of monster shoot 'em up show, but really, I thought really wonderfully done, with some interesting notes to play on the clones when we see some young clones. And then the third one just being, kind of pure story and plot to me, with everyone working to tie threads together, and things paying off, and some old baddies that we've seen before. So really, 3 really different episodes of the same story right in a row that you can enjoy, I think, in really different ways.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. David, how about you, brother?
Yeah, I of course, as a Star Wars geek, I had to prep with watching the season 1 premiere of Aftermath. I watched 14, 15, 16, War Mantle, Return to Camino, and Camino Lost, the end of season 1. Went over season 2, really 14, 15, 16, Tipping Point, The Summit, and Plan 99. Of course, Jason was on with us covering those at the end of season 2. And then I reread Dark Disciple. I mean, I did the whole kit and caboodle because of, it looks like the imminent return of Asajj Ventress and stuff like that. So I was really excited, really ready to go and up to speed. And so when, you dive into Confined, when Jason was just talking about the slow pace of it, I watched all 3 episodes again just now, before we jumped on together, and it is a slow pace. It reminds me of A New Hope. Haven't people said over the years, like, if you go back and watch A New Hope, like, what a slow pace it is? And we finally see Luke, I don't know how many minutes into it, our hero, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a great episode. Listen to the Kiner music. I know, Aaron, you're such a huge fan of them, and it is moody, just like Jason said. And I love that. I love the passage of time. Incredibly cool. Obviously, they start talking about M counts in that. Paths Unknown, very alien-like. I don't know what it is. I love seeing Hunter and Wrecker and the crew deal with those kinds of situations and stuff. That monster in there, just watching it again is a reminder. It almost felt like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea when it's grabbing the Marauder, but then also it had a very Sarlacc pit feel, that mouth and stuff like that. That episode really strikes me as how they're going to really kind of show how difficult it is to track down Hemlock, and then it was really cool to learn a bit about some of the Empire's experiments gone wrong. Those slither vines were pretty cool. Really nice touch. I knew it was Daniel Logan doing the voice of Mox. I didn't know if they had him modify his voice for the other 2 cadets. It was another actor, and he did both the other voices. But to hear Daniel Logan, his voice still has that quality of when you heard him in the Clone Wars, several years ago. But loved hearing him again. Shadows of Tantiss, that episode, I think it's like the way that they shot that, and the Emperor's yellow eyes just barely peeking out from underneath that his hood, is so intimidating. It's so cool. And I think I feel like they keep I don't know, you got less Vader, less Emperor. Just when you see him, it's so special, and I felt like they really did that here. And I put a little note here in our show notes, and I said I channeled my inner Jason Fry. And so, this is from being on with you and learning from you, Jason. But I could see the payoffs from the first episode to the site, especially in the third, and I really thought about Jason and some of those nice payoffs. But so really, really strong start, and really enjoyed it. How about you, Aaron?
Man, y'all hit everything on all the nails on the head. I loved how they kicked this off. We especially last season toward the end, we got a lot of really high paced, fast action from the Bad Batch, and which was absolutely incredible. But what I loved about this premiere was the slowed down pace and the storytelling. It was just so complex in what was going on. It was so simple, but yet so complex as we see the passage of time for Omega there being imprisoned on Tantiss, in Tantiss, Mount Tantiss. Then of course we have everything going on with Hunter and Wrecker there with Daniel Logan, of course. But then of course with the big payoff coming in the third episode, Shadows of Tantiss, it was a lot of just cool storytelling, character building. You start to see, I think what I loved most about these episodes is we've seen Omega build relationship with Hunter, with Wrecker, with Tech, Lord rest his soul, and Echo. But now we see her starting to connect with Crosshair, the one member, the one brother she never really had a chance to interact with. And we're starting to see her, even though he has been chasing them down for 2 seasons, we see her still reaching out and trying to make that connection. And I love the fact that we're seeing that happen. And I loved everything about the premiere. It was slower pace than what we're used to with the Bad Batch, but it was perfect for me. I loved it. So let's go ahead and jump in to talking about each episode. We're going to start with Confined, okay? Because that is the first episode, episode 1, that was released. Of course, this is the episode where, of course, we see Omega being imprisoned there in Mount Tantiss. And, of course, she's having to adjust to her new life there. And there's your nutshell of a synopsis for the episode. So this episode had a lot of interesting things going on in there. Of course, you mentioned earlier in opening remarks, David, we see him talking about the M counts of the when they're dealing with these tests for the clones. And of course, Nala Se is adamant that Omega not be tested because there's still something about Omega that she knows that we don't, and we're still feeling that out. But it was very interesting to see how the rigors of day in and day out task just go through and happen, and we see that, and we see time pass too with this. I think according to the episode guide that they released, when the episode begins, she's on day 21, judging by the marks on the wall, and by the end of it all, we're at day 125, and you see the changes in her as she goes. Her hair's gotten longer and stuff. It's really incredible to see. But let's talk about Omega and her imprisonment, because when I watched this, first thing I thought about, David, was you. The psychological aspect of her being confined, not being confined to that base, and she feels like she's in prison, but she's just can't leave the base. And she's doing work. She's not tied down to a cell or anything. But I want to get your thoughts on Omega and her her status here on Tantiss and the psychological mess she's in right now.
Yeah, watching this a second time, I was really thinking about it. I was thinking back to when we had Jason on to go over the season 2 finale, and we talked about the Imperial leaders getting together there on Ariadu with Tarkin, and you just get this feeling with Hemlock. You think about Mengele and some of the people that served under Hitler and some of the experimentation they did. When I was watching this, I was thinking right now I'm doing a purpose group every Friday. I'll do it tomorrow morning for a number of my retired clients, and I bring this up because part of teaching the purpose group is I'm using the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, and I don't know if either of you have read his book Man's Search for Meaning, and he wrote this after he served 1942 to 1945. He was in 4 concentration camps in 3 years. When he came out, Viktor Frankl learned that his wife, who was in a women's concentration camp, had died. And not only did he learn that she had died, but that she was pregnant with their child. Both his parents had died in a concentration camp, and his brother. But he comes out, and in Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about the experiences of being in a concentration camp and losing hope. And, when I think about Omega, I think about what Dr. Frankl mentioned. And one of the statistics that Dr. Frankl describes is, again, some rough numbers he was just calculating in his head after the war was over, is he surmised that maybe 1 out of 22, he was, of course, all men concentration camps, 1 out of 22 would survive. The numbers are just horrible. And so when you watch that, I think about Omega and really her resilience and the hopefulness that she provides, opposite of Crosshair. And it's tough to be positive when other people are negative and when you're dealing with really bad stuff. And just one other quick thing I'll mention, in the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl talks about one night, 2 or 3 in the morning, one of the guys asked him to speak to the men in the camp. They're freezing cold, snow cold outside. Dr. Frankl feels miserable, but he knew that the guys needed to hear something uplifting. And that's what I think about with Omega when she's talking to Crosshair and really starts to bring him around. It is not easy to be positive when everything else is negative. So it really shows her character. So kind of a long-winded answer to that question, but hopefully that's helpful in terms of how I was seeing Omega in this episode.
Very good. Very good. Now, of course, Jason, I want to bring this next one to you because you are a wealth of knowledge and history with Star Wars. There at the beginning of the episode, we have the shuttle coming in that ends up crashing on the surface. But we get to see in this episode the pilot of that shuttle, which appears to be just like an early version of a TIE pilot. Which I thought was just absolutely awesome to see. Had, the tubes and everything, just like you would see in the traditional TIE fighter pilot from the original trilogy. With, of course, the introduction of this pilot, of course, we have the new conscription pilots. What kind of... I'm trying to find the right... I just lost the wording I had. I had the right wording, and now it's gone. Carabast. So we're seeing this. Okay, there we go. We're starting to see the differences between. We've seeing the differences from the clones, and we're starting to see this middle evolution of Imperial troop. We had the clone troopers. Now, of course, we got these conscripted troopers coming in, which don't quite have the same look as the stormtroopers that we get by the time the original trilogy comes around, or Rebels or anything like that. But we're seeing that transition phase. From the creative standpoint, what is your thoughts on how they're presenting this transition military wise from the clones to these conscripted troopers to where we end up by the original trilogy?
Oh, I don't know if I really have a military point of view of it that'd be worth anything. I'm a, I wrote Guide to Warfare. People give me credit for being far smarter about this stuff than I am. Spoiler, you just make it up. But I will say that there's a couple things there that are interesting. Is that obviously it's really fun to see these kind of transitional states, the TK troopers, now the pilots. I really like that. And of course, these are also homages to Ralph McQuarrie. Like the TK troopers in particular are very close to the McQuarrie production art of stormtroopers pre A New Hope, with the exception that they're not carrying around lightsabers and shields. But I think we all understand that. But that's a really neat homage to someone who's such a towering figure in the history of Star Wars art, and whose art was just hugely important to making Star Wars work. Yet it doesn't feel forced. Like Rebels used some McQuarrie art for gangsters and things like that, and sometimes I felt it was a little like jamming a square peg in a round hole. But here I think it feels perfect. Like the homage works as a fitting tribute, but it also I think works in the world building, which is really fun to see. The other part of this, which goes back to late in I guess it's late in season 1 in Bad Batch, is the discovery that the clones are being decommissioned, phased out, what have you, and but the idea that conscripts who have been basically brainwashed and fed a lot of propaganda, they can be even more obedient and less independent minded than clones who were literally bred to be obedient soldiers. Like that's an interesting, provocative idea that I think Star Wars has had a lot of fun with, while also using, at least so far, a light touch on. But it's an interesting philosophical point to think about.
Well said. Very good. Very good. Of course, in this episode, we get to see things going on. We find out that we're testing the blood of all the clones for a merging capability for this the M. I forget. My mind just.
The M count?
The M count. There we go.
Yep.
They're testing the blood for how it transitions with M counts and stuff for this vital project that they're working on down in the vault. We find out the vault's down there. It's where Hemlock is taking Nala Se to do work. But we see this happening, and of course we know, of course, that Nala Se doesn't want Omega to be tested, because obviously there's whatever's going on down in that vault is quite huge, and of course we get some better idea of how huge it is later in the premiere in the third episode, which we'll talk about shortly. But it's a interesting thing to have this M count brought back up, especially after seeing things go on. We know to have it brought back up, because we really haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, David, Jason, we haven't been talking about midichlorians since Phantom Menace. It was just something that was brought up and then just kind of vanished. but it's interesting to see that being brought back into play. And of course, that's assuming that's what M count is meaning, which I think it is. But it's interesting to see that. I want to get y'all's opinions and y'all's thoughts on the fact that we're playing around with the midichlorians again. They never really went away. They just stopped talking about it. So what are your both of y'all's thoughts on the re-emergence of the midichlorian?
You want to take it, Jason, or what are your thoughts?
No, you can go first.
Okay, buddy. Yeah, you'd asked Jason and I that question, and I just start running through my head, and it feels like the first time we hear M count after Phantom Menace, right? And George Lucas used that really as a storytelling device to help us understand how much of the Force Anakin has, right? Like when Obi-Wan says it's a higher count than Master Yoda. Right. And so you get why he did it. And it really helped us as an audience go, oh, okay. All right. Well, that helps us to understand where Anakin is. And then, and again, maybe, Jason's, his knowledge of Star Wars is way more than mine. In my mind's eye, I can see Dr. Pershing there on Navarro at that facility. And one of the first times we see Pershing, we see him and he brings up M count. And that's in my mind's eye, and that might have been season one, right, of Mandalorian, where we hear that, and you kind of see the vats, and stuff like that, and looks like cloning stuff going on in there, and so I don't know. I guess I think about the sequel trilogy, and I think about the Mandoverse, and how this is really been really interwoven, particularly with the rise of Skywalker, and that movie and Palpatine coming back. It feels like now as they go through Bad Batch, Mando, Ahsoka, right, with Thrawn and whatever's being loaded onto Thrawn's Chimera, right, the Star Destroyer there, to end the episode, and they go back to Dathomir. All of this is really starting to come together. So I think it's really cool. And it is fascinating to watch this play out. I don't know. Any more thoughts on it, Jason, that you have?
Yeah. Not to be needlessly contrarian, but as I've gotten old and cranky, like, if you can if you know the starting point of a plot, of a design, etc., and the end point, which I think we're pretty sure we do, though who knows, maybe we'll be wrong. The stuff in between, I have to admit, like that, like finding out those pieces has sort of lost its thrill for me, to be honest. Like it's like beads on a string where I know, I kind of know what the necklace looks like. It's just a question of which beads in what order. But having said that, look, it's still cool to see how it works and think about it all going together. But what really works for me, and this is, a tribute to all the other good work that's being done on this show, what really makes it work for me is the characters. Like, you don't need to know all that to be invested in what's happening, or to be really interested in this interesting web of emotions and loyalties between Omega, Crosshair, Nala Se, the mysterious Dr. Carr, etc. So that for me is really the engine of the show. I'm curious to see how all this M count stuff works out and exactly how those beats go on, but it's really the characters and being invested in them that's going to keep me going.
Very good. Very good. Very good. And I'm glad you brought up characters, because the last thing I want to touch on for Confined is the introduction of a new character that we get. This character, of course, becomes pretty close to Omega. They become very close, and Omega ends up saving this character's life. And of course, I am talking about the Lurka Hound, lovingly named Batcher. This, of course, voice. Of course, you can't have something called Batcher and it being a creature in a Bad Batch episode without it being voiced by D. Bradley Baker as well. Of course, this hound was vital through. You see the interactions with Omega, where she's feeding it. Then, of course, it's hurt, so she tries healing it and getting it better. Then, of course, ends up, breaking the rules and destroying a droid to save its life, because they're going to put it down because it's too attached to Omega. And I like the fact that we got this connection with Omega with this animal. What were your thoughts on Batcher as a character? Because we see him come back in the third episode too. He escapes, and we're not done with him yet. He's still going to be sticking around. But what were your thoughts on Batcher, David?
Yeah, well, here this comes back around to like what Jason was saying about characters and stuff, and I think about like what I was mentioning about Omega and what we see of her and why we root for her, right? Is you see her being the positive one when Crosshair is negative and down, and she continues to have that positive attitude. And again, to be confined, to be restricted and have your life taken from you, but still to have her attitude, we love that about her. And then when you see somebody caring for an animal, in this case, her caring for Batcher, again, how do you not root for her, right? Compared to Hemlock, the commando stormtroopers there, obviously the conscripted soldiers. This is that development. I hope I'm hitting it right here, Jason, in terms of character. The story, the writers make you care even more. I already cared about Omega, but now I care about her even more, seeing these wonderful sides to her. And of course, like I said, I channeled my inner Jason Fry. This is one of the payoffs later, right, in the third episode, where Batcher comes back around, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I love Batcher. I'm a fan. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, on the one hand, it's a classic adventure story trope. Be nice to animals, be nice to the little helpless things. It pays off in the end. But what I really liked about it is that there's something subtle going on here that I really enjoyed. I mean, that nickname, first of all, Batcher, the show is the Bad Batch, and the clones are created in batches. And, Batcher essentially means brother. And, it's Omega extending, she says that all the time to Crosshair, "You're my brother." She says it to the rest of the batch, etc. And, she's able to extend that to, this creature who needs her help. But there's an interesting turnabout there. I mean, one of my favorite Clone Wars episodes is the ones on Ryloth with Boyle and Waxer.
Yes.
And the little Twi'lek girl, Numa. And the emotional payoff of that scene is she just calls them Nara. And Boyle and Waxer don't know quite what to do with her. And there's an undercurrent there that it's pretty clear that they think Nara means clone, and it's not. Obi-Wan tells them at the end, it means brother. And so that's one of my favorite moments in Clone Wars, because it takes this, sort of, I mean, they're grunts, they're soldiers who have to deal with a kid. That's a classic old war movie story. But, it takes something that they think is maybe faintly, dehumanizing, just a term that indicates they're less, and discovers it actually means this little girl thinks that they're far more. It's just this wonderful moment. And that was about, someone not a clone extending that benediction, if you will, to clones. And here we have it the other way around. It's a clone girl who extends it, not even to another human, but to an animal. But it's a really nice echo, but turned on its head in a way that, as a storyteller, I really appreciated. And it's so subtle; you can enjoy the whole episode without it. But it's it's part of the richness of this kind of nexus of shows that Dave Filoni and his very talented crew have created.
Very good. Very good. Love it. Love it. And I love Batcher. I can't wait to see what we do with them in the future. So fabulous discussion there. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, going to continue our discussion of the Bad Batch premiere, talking about Paths Unknown. Hang on. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron, David here, joined by the incredible Jason Fry. We just talked about Confined, and we are moving into episode 2, Paths Unknown. Incredible episode, of course. This one, we see Hunter and Wrecker doing their thing, trying to find Omega, following leads, trying to get that mission done to locate their missing squad member. So right off the bat, we end up seeing Hunter and Wrecker are working as mercenaries to get information. And of course, this is where we end up getting a callback from season 1 of the Bad Batch, when we find out we end up on the planet Devron, where they are selling a member of the Pike, or not selling really, they're trading a member of the Pike Syndicate to Issa Duran, and of course her son, where they can get information about where Hemlock may have taken Omega. So incredible scene right there at the beginning. I love how they made this trade and everything. It's and I love the feel a little bit of how this throne room for Issa Duran is kind of, to me, eerily, yes, it's the same but different than Jabba's, because you have that ray shield that they're standing on that all she has to do is hit a button and people fall away, just like in Jabba's palace. So you just don't know what's at the bottom of that pit. But I love this opening scene. I want to get your thoughts on it, because this connects us right back to season 1, but also being on Devron and seeing the Deveronian homeworld. This takes us back to the first time we saw Deveronian, of course, which was in the cantina in A New Hope. So let's start there. What were your thoughts on this opening sequence where we're getting the information we need, which really sets up the rest of this entire episode? Jason, let's start with you.
Well, I'll prove that I'm a total fraud, because having just, been a little snooty about not being so interested in the lore building, I was really excited to be on Deveron. I was like, oh, I think they're on Deveron. Are they on Deveron? That's so cool. Because, I wrote a book on Deveron, Weapon of a Jedi. So that was really fun. I was kind of trying to look around every corner. So, yeah, neat. They're new planets in this world, which always makes my geeky heart grow a couple of sizes larger.
We do got some great planets on there, and I love the fact that we were on Devron too. David, how about you, brother?
Oh, Jason's killing me. No, the reason why we have Jason, every time I think I'm kind of catching up to him with story and how to do this, and things pay off, and just Jason takes it to a whole new level with storytelling, especially with Batcher. I'm like, I just love it. That's why we have you on, Jason. But no, I thought it was really cool. I didn't realize, when I first watched it, that Angelica Houston's doing the voice of Issa Duran, and she's, gosh, all I think about is her and Captain EO, and of course a bunch of other stuff. But she does a great job, kind of the evil mom and all that kind of stuff. The thing that, as this, well, I guess I know you said just focusing on the opening scene. I guess the thing that I start to think about, and, I know Jason's a huge sports fan, particularly the Mets, and I being from Michigan, I've watched the Pistons and all that, and I'm going back to, I'm channeling my inner Chauncey Billups. They were defending NBA champions, and in 2004, 05, they're battling the Spurs, and they go down Game 6, and they beat the Spurs to force a Game 7, and they're interviewing Chauncey Billups after the game, and he's just sweating, and the person they're interviewing him says, what are your thoughts on this? And he said something. Again, this is June 2005, and I still remember it. Chauncey Billups says, "If it ain't rough, it ain't right." And so when I think about what Hunter and Wrecker are trying to do, and this is rough. This is not going to be easy, like I mentioned before. This isn't just, oh yeah, everyone knows where Hemlock's, Mount Tantiss and what he's doing and the Emperor's plans. No, they don't. It's rough, and if it ain't rough, it ain't right. So it starts off, this is dicey. You're standing on a platform that can disappear in seconds, but you're trying to get Omega back, and so it was pretty cool to see the start, and it was neat to see Hunter throw back that horn to Roland Durand. Yeah, pretty cool.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I love the fact that they brought back Roland and even the horn throw. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because it takes me back to season 1 and to the fact that I've said it for years, David, and I have. Fillers don't exist. Everything connects somehow, and this just came full circle for these characters, and I loved seeing them again. But let's keep going, because this information that they get from Roland and Issa Duran take them to a new planet called Cetron. Of course, we never hear this name in the episode itself, but thanks to the episode guide there at StarWars.com, we find out that this planet is called Cetron. It's a new location that was created for this episode, and we find out that it is the home of what we find out to be an abandoned base that used to be run by Hemlock. And this is where we end up meeting Deke, Stack, and Mox. These are 3 young clones who survived the destruction of the base because they escaped right before it was destroyed, and have been just surviving on their own on this planet, one day at a time. And of course, we find, Mox voiced by Daniel Logan. Then, of course, Julian Dennison voiced Deke and Stack. Apparently, from what I have read about this young man, about this person, he's, of course, also from New Zealand as well. So he's got that same, got some of that same accenting that he doesn't have the distinctive voice that Daniel has, but he has some of those same inflections, which served good. But let's talk about these 3 new characters, these 3 young clones. What were your thoughts when we encountered these young clones and their role in this episode? David, sorry.
You want me to go? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I was initially kind of confused when I saw these guys, because I think I'm used to seeing the younger ones that look like Boba, in the Clone Wars. And then we see him on Camino, over the last couple of years, first 2 seasons, you just always see him that age. So to see him up around the teenage years, that was a nice little change, nice little touch. And gosh, they're survivors, right? Not only orbital bombardment, which sounds so pleasant, but then you got the whole, facility covered with slither vines afterwards. But a nice little touch. Obviously, they're going to be taken to, was it Pabu? Is it Pabu? Pab? Yeah, I think that's the island planet and stuff like that. And Hunter's encouraging them to, make some decisions and not just be soldiers and stuff like that. But that nice little touch. And I was getting a little nervous there when let's see. Okay, it's Stack is talking to Moss, because Deke goes with Hunter and and wreckers. So I was a little nervous that they'd leave, but I thought it was really cool when they came over and said, you know what, we're gonna help our fellow clones, our fellow brothers out. So kind of cool. And again, I immediately noticed Daniel Logan's voice, and it's always good to hear him back in the whole process.
Very good, very good. Well said, well said. Jason, how about you? How did you feel about these clones? And honestly, you love new planets and new locations. So, what were your thoughts on Cetron as well?
I mean, hey, cool. Can't wait to put it on a map. I was sort of hoping, because in season 2, it took me a while to figure out, like, oh, they named the planets in the databank. I need to go back and look at that. So I was a little more on the ball this time. The second y'all told me that the databank had been updated, I was like, oh, is there a name for the planet? No, the fun thing with the clones for me, and this is, the storytelling lens I like to look at, is, there's an interesting push-pull there between, they're soldiers. That's what they're bred for. They're trained to survive. And so, that the idea of getting a ride off this incredibly unpleasant, dangerous planet is an obvious thing to do. The push-pull between that and, like, oh, these are our fellow clones, what's the right thing to do there? I thought that was interesting and well done, and done, quickly and efficiently, as a kind of little mini story. So that was fun to see. I don't know, what I really loved about this, not to jump ahead much, was just the kind of alien Prometheus vibe of the episode. Particularly when they're going into the base. I thought the tribute was pretty obvious, but I mean, it was so nicely done, and also just calls attention to how good the animation has gotten. Stuff moving in the darkness, stuff moving in water, squishy textures, etc. Like, that would have been really, really hard, I think, for the first couple of seasons of this show. But now, all that amazing hard work has really paid off in ways that are really fun to be a part of as a viewer.
Oh, well said, well said. You actually took me where I was heading to originally. It's like you got my notes in front of you. The base itself, the abandoned base, had that very dark, very almost haunted, abandoned feeling. It just, like, straight out of Prometheus, or even to me, it reminded me a little bit of the Aliens movie when they go to the colony. But it was very, very, what's the word? It was very haunting in a way. So I liked seeing that devastation of the abandoned base, destroyed base there, and the fact that we have this alien constructed vine just kind of as their foil in this. David, how about you? Talk to me about the planet, about the base.
Yeah, no, this, I think, even makes me think about, like I said, Chauncey Billups' famous quote after that game in the NBA Finals, if it ain't rough, it ain't right, and just trying to get out of there. I started thinking about it. I'm like, if Mox and Stack don't come back, I think whatever that alien is, that slither vine, or the mother of all slither vines there in the water, I don't know that they get out. And so it feels legitimately terrifying. Yet very much, I'm with both of you. The alien feel, I love that. Watching the little things when Hunter cut the arms off, and then it kind of grows legs, and they're scurrying around, and I think, just like Jason mentioned, like with the animation, like I was watching it, like I said again tonight before I jumped on with you guys, and I'm looking and I'm like, wait, it's so dark, but yet I can make everything out. And I'm like, that's just incredible, the visuals. And, hats off to them for it, because I really loved it. I loved it when they're over at the console and they're trying to get the data. I love Gonky, and and it was critical to get Gonki out. A lot of people were worried about Gonki maybe more than anybody else, but at least Gonki got out. And but it was nice. I love the escape. Like I said, that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea kind of feel with the arms coming up over the Marauder and stuff. I love the teamwork with the cables and all that stuff. And I was going to mention this to I can just see D. Bradley Baker doing it. Like Wrecker's hanging up there, and that whole case of explosive blows up, and the first thing you hear, Wrecker yells, "Yeah!" Because of course he loves to see everything blown up. But just a great touch, funny little comedy in there too as they get away. But I really enjoyed it. I guess I've seen that before, them escaping, but I don't know. I don't get tired of it. It's pretty cool.
No, very good, because it was a fun episode. It was not a lot of it was just fun. Needless to say, it was just fun. I enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, a little more faster pace than the last episode. One last thing about Paths Unknown before we head into the final episode there, is the way this episode ended, of course, with them escaping Cetron, and of course they got the 3 young clones on the ship and they're flying away. You have Hunter sitting in the back at the computer, and he's got the data from the computer they downloaded from the base, and he's looking up at the front of the cockpit, and of course there's Mox, there's Deke and Stack, and of course Wrecker, and they're laughing and talking and having a good time. And you can see almost an expression of longing in Hunter's face there, because it's the same type of atmosphere they had when Omega was on the ship, when they had Tech, when they had when everybody was together as a family. You saw a lot of more of that laughter and enjoyment, but they've had a lot. Hunter's dealing with a lot of tragedy at this point. He's lost Omega and he's got to find her. He's got Crosshair out there somewhere, who probably still wants to hunt him down as far as he knows. He doesn't know he's sitting in a prison with Omega. And of course, the recent loss of Tech is very deep and very emotional time for him. And I just wanted to pick your brain on this, David, before we move on. What are your thoughts on Hunter and where he's at that moment at the end of this episode?
Well, this ties into something I was thinking about when it sounds like they learned of the sector. Again, here I'm thinking about Jason and of course timelines. I've had that out the last several nights, looking at the timelines of Asajj Ventress and Dark Disciple and all that, but also the galaxy map that Jason's talking about, and just the frustration there of trying to find a child, right? And he says there's a lot of space to cover. So you have these sectors, and I just think, again, it's just proving to be so daunting, so difficult, and you just got me thinking about how, again, well, you said the most difficult work, and I've said this on the podcast and many times. I've been a psychologist 31 years. The most difficult work I've done is working with parents who've lost children. I've done it for 31 straight years. Parents of all ages, from their 30s up to, I have parents in their 80s losing kids my age. I'm 55, and heart attack, cancer, car accident, you name it. And so the loss of a child, and she's been gone, like you were mentioning earlier, Aaron, all the scratches on the wall. It's just devastating. And so he's still fighting, he's still trucking along, but yeah, from a psychological standpoint, that it's tough to get out of bed in the morning, and I've talked to too many parents who have gone through it. But that's getting pretty deep. And again, hopefully most of the kids watching it won't think about that, but at least us three here talking, we can talk a little bit more deep about it. But Hunter's, he's the dad here, right? I guess they are the space dads, but he's really was hoping for more information out of that console there on that planet.
True. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, we are going to take another quick break. We come back. We are going to start our discussion of the third and final episode of the premiere, Shadows of Tantiss. Hang on. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron, David, and Jason Fry still hanging with us, and we are talking the premiere of The Bad Batch. So let's go right in the Shadow of Tantiss, the third episode of the final season there. Of course, this is the episode where everything comes to head. We see Omega and Crosshair there on Tantiss, making their escape from the facility. And it is a crazy moment because of all the times to escape. They do it when the Emperor is there. So we have the return of Emperor Palpatine to the Star Wars world. We see him animated here, voiced by Ian McDiarmid again, the one and only. Can't have the Emperor without him. So fabulous episode to me. This, of the 3 episodes of the premiere, I would say the Confined was my favorite, then this episode, Shadow of Tantiss, followed by Paths Unknown. But what I really liked about this episode, of course, was we see the payoff of that relationship we see being built in the first episode between Omega and Crosshair. We see it come to payoff as they escape together. And I love that wholeheartedly. So let's jump into this. David, let's talk about the return of let's talk about the return of Palpatine first, the return of Ian McDiarmid. Of course, he's there to inspect the facility and see the work Hemlock's doing and the progress being done on this Project Necromancer, which is a vital to the survival of the Empire, as he states. Let's talk to me about Palpatine. How'd you feel when he showed back up, and this story that they're spinning for him here?
Well, I like I mentioned earlier, I think in my initial reactions, they always talk about less is more. You hear Filoni talk about how in Rebels you can't have Vader being the baddie all the time. You have the Inquisitorius there and stuff. And even with Palpatine, less is more, but it just means so much when they show up on the screen. And, something that I meant to do, because I wanted to talk to both of you about it, was when Ian McDiarmid is playing Palpatine and he's sitting there talking to Hayden Christensen in the Opera House, and he talks about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and here you see Palpatine trying to do the very thing that Darth Plagueis, right, trying to defy death. Obviously, Palpatine hints to Anakin that, it's how ironic he dies in his sleep. You're like, oh my God, just chills when he's saying that stuff. But I guess my thoughts are, here he is trying to do the same thing as his former master, right? And going to incredible lengths to make it happen. So those are just a few of my thoughts with seeing Palpatine. I love seeing him. I love it.
Very good. Very good. Now, of course, we know this eventually. Well, we assume this eventually is what's tying the story together from prequel to sequel storyline. There, we just have that feeling. That's where it's leading. The return of Palpatine. Of course, we have Necromancer that of course was mentioned in was it in the Ahsoka series or Mandalorian?
Mando season 3 episode.
Mando season 3.
I sent you that little video. Yeah.
That's because that was a good catch, because I'll admit I missed that one. I heard him say it and I'm like, okay, cool, new project. It didn't click that I'd heard that name before. So I'm excited that they brought that back in and are tying that together. So let's talk. I know, Jason, we like the characters. We like the story being told. Let's talk about the story between Omega and Crosshair. Because I love the fact that through 2 of these 3 episodes, we see their growing and budding relationship as they're trying to get along. Matter of fact, and I failed to mention this when we were talking about Confined, but when we hear Crosshair talking to Omega and he actually calls her by name, he calls her Omega, that's the first time in this series he has called her Omega. First time he said her name. So we see that, to me, we see a relationship beginning to bud and build, which is, Crosshair's very closed off character. What are you, I'll get your opinion on the story being told between these 2 characters and the growth we're seeing in them, as time is going on.
Yeah, no, I think you described it really well. And, I think it's great this show is taking its time. It doesn't, this hasn't all come to fruition with, a flash of insight on Crosshair's behalf, or, a moment of clarity, or, those things that generally happen when a plot hasn't been worked out sufficiently. We've seen it unfold over time. That's something that, among the many things that Confined did really well. So that's there, but also I remember Ryan Johnson's advice of lift not drag, like always, follow this weighty stuff with some Flash Gordon mayhem. And so, one thing I really loved in this episode was how annoyed Crosshair is with Omega's kind of boundless optimism. Like, as this plan gets more and more improvised and less likely to succeed, he just gets increasingly agitated at her, and she's blithely like, okay, well, we can steal the Emperor's shuttle. He's like, oh, come on. So that was a really nice dynamic. And, and it's also, while showing you the bond developing between these characters, it's also a great kind of light, fun adventure moment.
Very much so. Very much so. Well said. And it is a very improvised plan. It's one of these things where, because Nala Se is being pulled away because the Emperor, they know, this Dr. Emery, the other female clone, Dr. Kerr, she's going to be testing the blood for Nala Se instead, which means Omega's blood can't get disposed of like it's supposed to, and it's getting tested. So Nala Se really tells her, still take my tablet and get out of here. And of course, she's not going to go without her brother. And we see that happen. And literally, I love the fact how she's just constantly she knows she's never worked with Crosshair before, but she knows Crosshair. She knows his strengths. She knows all he has to do is get a blaster and everybody's going to go down. It's crazy. But then we see them make their escape into the woods, using the same escape route that, of course, Batcher used through the kennel. And things get out in the woods. Of course, troopers get out there hunting them, and we end up seeing the return of Batcher, who ends up saving Omega's life there, and we end up seeing them escape in the stolen shuttle that the search party had, and they make their escape. And as they're being flown down and getting ready to be shot down by the fighters, we see, of course, Emery come running in and we need Omega. Her blood is what we need. She's apparently the Grogu. And they call off the fighters, and the escape happens and the episode ends. It's really crazy to see this going into play, because now we know her blood's what's needed. It has the right. It didn't lose any of the quote unquote M count. for the transfer that they were doing. So now that she has escaped, we don't know where they're going. We assume they'll meet up somehow with Wrecker and Hunter. We don't know where, we don't know when, we don't know how, but it's going to happen. So that's the story there. But I do want to talk about Emperor Palpatine, because we have him on the planet. He's there to look at this, and I know we touched on it a little bit, David, when we first started talking about it, but Palpatine's there to examine this project in this vault, and he's going on and on about how vital of a project this is to the Empire, and to the survival of the Empire. And it's very matter of fact in his discussion. He's not holding back. He's literally saying, our survival is based on this project succeeding. It gives him basically a blank check to do what he needs to do. So I just wanted to get to y'all's thoughts, and I know we talked a little bit about it, David, already, but wanted to get y'all's thoughts on Palpatine's obsession with this project. We don't know fully what the project is yet. We know it's got cloning. We know it's got M counts. We can make all kinds of speculation and assumptions what it is, but until we find out, we're not going to go that route. But what are your thoughts on his obsession with this project, David?
Well, it'd be interesting. They show him and Hemlock down in, like you said, the vault, and it looks so cool, that black and red, and just the way it looked. And they're opening something up, and then they show that straight on shot of Palpatine, and he's looking at some specimen. I mean, are these clones? Are they not? I'm very curious about what's in there. But to that whole end, when he says, when he's talking to Hemlock about there's nothing more important to the survival of this empire, and I just, in my mind, I just changed the words. There's nothing more important to my survival than this project, and how to do this. And of course, we see in The Rise of Skywalker, we hear about clones that didn't work, right? They morphed Snoke as being clones that couldn't hold Palpatine's essence, and so on and so forth. And then we finally see him at the end hanging from that kind of like hook, at the very end. I was again going back through Jason's book Timelines, and I was always kind of towards the back there and looking at all the pictures that they put in for The Rise of Skywalker, because of some of the stuff that we're seeing here. And we see that obsession come all the way, like we said, till episode 9. But yeah, I think of persons like this who are not only greedy and evil and so on, they never want to die, right? And but he's got a full obsession on it, and he's putting everything towards making this happen. What are your any thoughts on that, Jason? I don't know.
The aspect of all that I really liked best was Hemlock, and perhaps not the greatest name in Star Wars history, but I've contributed a few on that list myself, so who am I to throw stones? But I love that aside. I love the character. It's a wonderful voice performance. And it's wonderfully animated too. I mean, there are scenes in this episode where, you're getting a wonderful acting performance just from the way Hemlock, the expressions on his face. And of course that face is a bunch of polygons or whatever it is, which is just, it kind of another extraordinary salute to the folks making this show, that that's there and communicated to the audience. and also just from a character point of view, he's interesting. He's not the obvious choice. I love that he's not afraid of the Emperor. I mean, he knows this is the ruler of the galaxy, etc. And he's not a fool, but he's not afraid of the Emperor. He's, he bows, etc. But he doesn't prostrate himself on the floor, stammer, or anything like that. Hemlock's super good at his job, and he knows his job is important, and he's proud of that. And I thought that was really interesting. That's there are a lot of ways to have played that scene that would have fit what we think Star Wars does, but would have been a lot less interesting.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Now, the last thing I want to touch on with Shadow of Tantiss before we start wrapping things up here, of course, is I want to talk about the centrifuge machine. We keep cutting to it throughout the episode and seeing it, watching it turn and change vials and everything, and almost like it's a clock ticking down to D-Day, or to the ultimate issue at hand. It's a countdown timer is what it seems, and they interlaced it throughout the episode, and I loved how they did that. What were what were your thoughts on that type of insertion into this episode? How this countdown was just going throughout the whole episode, from the beginning all the way to right there at the end when it clicks and all of a sudden the alarm goes off that this is our match. We see that timer going. Definitely a story, a very much vital part of the episode. What were y'all's thoughts on that centrifuge clock per se?
Oh, please, Jason, take this as an author. I'm with Aaron. I'm so curious. As I was watching that, what your thoughts would be on that.
It's when you have things you need to show like that, you need the audience to be aware of the stakes and the passage of time, etc. Like, there are lots of ways you could do that. But what I thought was super smart was, oftentimes don't overthink it. Hey, we know what the centrifuge is doing. We've been seeing that for a while. What if it looks like a big clock?
Yeah.
Done. Like the audience gets that. The audience knows each time it clicks, like, that's really bad. And it's a simple, really elegant solution. And there were a whole lot of convoluted, spacey ways you could have done that, talking about rotations and stuff. But no, just make it look like a clock. I mean, it's brilliant. But that's oftentimes what storytelling brilliance is not getting in your own way and figuring out something simple that works.
Nice.
Very good. Any thoughts, David?
No, this is an example. Jason said it before with me, and I'm saying it with him. I can't do better than him. But I love it when Jason said, "It's a clock." Boom, done. Love it. That's it.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest thing is just the best thing to go with, and I love that.
Yeah, I'm not Jason nailed it. I'm not adding anything to it. No.
Perfect. Well, that's going to wrap up Shadows of Tantiss. Let's go ahead and get our final reactions to this 3-part premiere. Get your final reactions, final thoughts, and we'll wrap things up. David, kick it off.
Yeah, just real short here. Yeah, I thought a really strong start to season 3. I enjoyed seeing the Emperor. Like Vader, he's shown sparingly, and I really enjoy that. It adds weight to him and all that, and he already has it. But, I'll just end with this. The Michelle Ang, D. Bradley Baker, Brad Rao, Jennifer Corbett did the whole interviews that they do with several podcast outlets. And I was listening to D. Bradley Baker, and he was interviewed, and one of the podcasters asked him how he felt about how the series ends. And D. Bradley Baker really kind of walked that narrow line. He's like, I don't want to spoil it for people, but I'll just say this, that what did D. Bradley, he says, you'll be hard pressed to not shed tears as the series wraps up. So I'm excited for that. I'm curious to see where this goes, and how far it goes into that period between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. But real strong start, and like I said, excited to see where it goes.
Very good, very good. Final reactions, Jason.
Yeah, I thought that, first of all, and most importantly, they were a lot of fun. Made me, immediately look like, oh, wait, when's the next one? You really saw this whole creative crew's skills on display, whether it was, what they were doing with animation or, more basically just with wonderful performances and smart storytelling. 3 episodes that are such varied tones and looks, yet all working together. Just some really, really fun stuff. And, I'll add just as an aside too, also, it was really pretty kind of them to give us, kind of a 3-part taster to get into the new season, but also have it fit together really satisfyingly as its own arc. Like, it would have been fine to just drop us in with 3 random episodes that, didn't necessarily hook together, but these really did. And so, I don't know. I was pretty happy about that and pretty grateful for that.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I enjoyed this premiere, and I have to 100% agree with what you said, Jason, because I thought the 3-episode, not just 3-episode premiere, this was a 3-episode arc that just blended together perfectly to kick off this series, this 3rd and final season, really. And it brought us new planets, it brought us new characters, it gave us old characters. But what I liked the most about this is the character stories and the character growth we got in these episodes. And to me, that's what made these episodes so good, was the story, the character growth, and relationship building we see in this. And I loved it. It was great. I cannot wait till next week. Next week cannot come fast enough, but it was incredible. It was awesome. With that, that closes out our discussion on the premiere of The Bad Batch. Of course, we, like I said, could not have done this without you, Jason. It was just the right thing to do. Of course, we always have to ask you, anytime you're here, anything you want to promote, push, or go right ahead. The floor is yours. Tell us what's going on in the world of Jason Fry.
Yeah, no, can't tell you really any of the things I'm working on, unfortunately, but working on a couple of things that are really fun and dear to my heart, and hopefully one of them we can unveil pretty soon, and the other one will take a little longer, but we'll talk about them in time.
Well, you have the floor whenever you can talk about them, my friend. You are more than welcome to come back and let us know all about it. We love hearing from you anytime, anywhere. And we definitely appreciate it, and appreciate you joining us for the premiere. So hang on, everybody. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us again, Jason. We appreciate you being with us. It's always great to have you on. But now it is time for the return of David's Psychology Corner and find out what's going on there. David, the floor is yours, man. Welcome back to Psychology Time.
Yeah, well, you and I had talked. Well, we talked quite a bit, text quite a bit, and I'd mentioned to you that I wanted to morph my psychology corner really into kind of a new name, David's Psychology Factoid, and just because I don't know, it's been so busy here at our house, but I still wanted to bring some, a psychological flair, some psychological information to the episodes, particularly when you and I cover series, and we've done that with Mando and Ahsoka and so on and so forth. But so over the course of this season of The Bad Batch, I'm gonna have psychology factoids just to get you thinking, and just kind of, like I said, keep the psychology flair here at the end of each episode. So listen, the first one is actually multiple factoids, and since the Bad Batch follows the story of some of our favorite clones or soldiers, I thought I'd kick off my psychology factoids with three different factoids that all come from the January/February 2024 Monitor on Psychology. I've used the Monitor before to mention different psychological statistics and stuff, and so I saw these, and again, brand spanking new Monitor, and in a section they were talking about traumatic brain injury, and we know that soldiers experience that, and I thought it'd be a perfect one to start off with because of covering the Bad Batch. So here's the first factoid, pretty sobering. 67.7%, that is the percentage increase in mood disorders in soldiers following a traumatic brain injury. That's compared to 37.5% increase in mood disorders in soldiers without a traumatic brain injury. Okay. Second factoid, 31.9%. That's the percentage increase in alcohol use disorders in soldiers following a traumatic brain injury. That's compared to 10.3% increase in soldiers without a traumatic brain injury. So you can see how much more significant the numbers are with a traumatic brain injury. Last one, third factoid, 21.3%. That is the rate of increase in time to suicide. It's pretty quick, right? For soldiers with a TBI, and that's compared to those soldiers without a history of a traumatic brain injury. So I don't know, I just thought they'd be appropriate, just something kind of to think about. We think about our soldiers and the men and women who serve us, and some of the things that they go through. But yeah, being soldiers is no joke, but those are some kind of serious but sobering statistics, but I thought they'd fit perfectly with the crew, our heroes here in the Bad Batch, Aaron.
Very good. Very good. Love it. Love it. So welcome to the Psychology Factoid.
That's right.
Very cool. Very cool. So, of course, if somebody wants to talk to you about Star Wars, the Bad Batch, or the Factoid, how would they go about doing that?
Or the Factoid. Very nice. Three places, obviously, Twitter X, that is at David_Modders, Modders. Instagram, just look up my name. And then, what is it? David.Modders at, is it Blue Sky, right? Why am I, see, I need to look it up before I do it. Blue Sky. You guys will find me at Blue Sky. There we go. There's the three spots. There they are.
Perfect. Perfect. And of course, if you do want to talk Star Wars with me, the best place to do that is on X at TA Harris 121079. So check me out there. Or of course, any of the show social media, you can hit us up there. If you talk to somebody there, it will be me, because I have my fingers in all of that. So of course, you can hit us up on X or Facebook at SW Reactions Pod. Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, Tumblr, where our show notes are, TikTok, all at SW Reactions. Of course, we have an email. You can always email us thoughts and opinions there at swreactions@gmail.com. Or, of course, if you are more adventurous and you want to leave us a voicemail, which we would love to do now that we're in the full swing of the Bad Batch, leave us your thoughts and opinions of the Bad Batch. You can do that at our SpeakPipe. That is speakpipe.com /Star Wars reactions. It is there for your voicemail pleasure. Leave us a message. You'll hear it on the show. So check us out there. Whew. Well, David.
So we're probably done, right? We don't have to do anything else, right?
Oh, if it was only that easy, my friend. You can't escape that easy.
I tried.
You got a bad feeling about this, don't you?
I do.
Well, here we go. Of course, we have to end it the same way. It is our Star Wars dad joke of the week. It just wouldn't feel right not ending it this way. So here we go. David, does R2-D2 have any brothers?
I don't know. Does R2-D2 have any brothers?
Nope. He only has transistors.
Transistors. Okay.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
We're at Slap Happy at this point of the night, right? Recording.
Of course. Well, David, my friend, this has been a blast as always.
Oh, absolutely. Great start. So thankful for Jason to be on. That's 3 for 3 premieres, Bad Batch Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 now. So
That's
we just
right.
appreciate that so much. And he's such a great interview and has so many really neat insights from that writer, author perspective. It's so good to have him on. So big thanks to him.
Absolutely. Big thanks to Jason. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. We appreciate each and every one of y'all. We love y'all. Y'all the best. We're praying for y'all. Remember, this is the year of kindness. Do something kind for somebody every day this week, whether it's just a helping hand, coffee, and candy bar. Just do something nice for somebody every day. You'll never know how much that kindness will affect you and will affect others as well. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.